Are you constantly asking yourself, how do I get my team to be more accountable? Do you find yourself thinking, why don't they just take ownership? Why do I have to keep following up with everybody and telling them every move to make? If so, you're not alone. The statement, we need more accountability, is one of the most common complaints that I hear from construction business owners. But here's the thing, what looks like a people problem is often something else. And until your team knows exactly what's expected, how to do it, and why it matters, accountability will always feel like a struggle. Hey, you're listening to the Construction Leading Edge podcast, where it's all about systematizing your construction business to eliminate chaos and maximize profit, freedom, and impact. My name is Todd DeWalt, and my team and I have helped over 400 construction companies do just that: eliminate chaos, grow their profits, and build their teams that actually own their results. And today on this episode, we're going to be answering this big question: how do you create real accountability without micromanaging or losing your mind? In this episode, you'll walk away with a few things. Number one, why capable people underperform when one specific thing is missing that's often overlooked. Second, you'll understand the 3 areas that your business needs clarity to unlock accountability. And number 3, how to turn expectations into ownership so your team actually takes the ball and runs with it. And here's the kicker. If you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night remembering or worrying about what didn't get done, it's probably not because your team doesn't care. It's because they're missing one key thing. And that's what we're going to talk about before we're done today. So if you're ready to stop micromanaging, stop telling everybody what to do and following up with them, and start leading a team that takes ownership and creates a culture of accountability, stick around. This episode of the Construction Leading Edge podcast is just for you. So let's talk about what this looks like in the real world. Let me know if some of this sounds familiar. You think you've explained something to your team very clearly, but it still doesn't get done. You feel like you have to chase people down and constantly follow up to get things finished. You feel like you're the CFUO, the Chief Follow-Up Officer. Everyone's busy, but you're not really sure what they're accountable for. Maybe things just aren't getting done. It seems like something is missing, but you just can't put your finger on it. There's also no consistency. It feels like every project you're inventing the wheel. It feels like you're flying by the seat of your pants, making it up as you go along. You can't get away from the day-to-day because you're constantly answering basic questions. You're spending a lot of time on low-rent tasks. 25% of your time, 50% of your time, maybe 75% of your time is spent answering questions. You have capable people, but you feel like they're underperforming, and you can't figure out why. Maybe you feel like you're doing the job of these people that you've hired and you're paying for, and your team just keeps asking you the same questions, but it's like nothing sticks. So I actually found a good solution for this. I like to give these away at our live events. So if you find yourself answering the same questions over and over, you can buy these little buttons that allow you to record a message, and you could do something like this. So imagine having this on your desk. Somebody calls you or walks into your office and they ask you the same question. You can just push this button and avoid having to say this because you've recorded it, and share this message with them.
That's a good question, but I think I've answered that at least 6 times for you.
Yeah, so you could have an assortment of these buttons on your desk, pre-programmed with different things that you find yourself saying all the time. That's one way to do it. I think there's probably a better way. So if you're dealing with this every day, there's probably a pretty good chance that your team isn't struggling with accountability because they don't care. It's because they're missing something. They need you to provide something that is missing. It's not all on them. So let's think about the ripple effects of this. When there feels like a lack of accountability, then it affects your time in a negative way. Maybe you spend hours putting out fires that should never have happened in the first place. You're stuck answering low-level questions, which means you can't spend time working on the business, thinking about strategic stuff, focusing on selling, maybe focusing on the next thing you want to work on. You feel like you're the only one who can move things forward, so nothing happens without you. Every problem lands in your lap. There's also a financial impact. When things are falling through the cracks, that often leads to rework and schedule delays and missed handoffs, projects taking too long, projects getting stalled out, schedules slipping on the front end. In other words, profit bleeds. Maybe you've hired people and your overhead has gone up and you still feel like you're doing other people's jobs for them. And opportunities get missed because you're too tied up in the weeds to go pursue them. Maybe you don't see opportunities, or by the time you get back to them, it's too late because you're so busy just dealing with this day-to-day firefighting. This also has an effect on your reputation with clients. Clients begin to lose confidence when things fall through the cracks or they get delayed. Sometimes they'll come out and say, hey, doesn't seem like you guys know what you're doing. Occasionally, they'll come out and say, hey, I've lost confidence in you. But usually it's something else, right? They start questioning pay requests. They start scrutinizing things. They get more and more involved. And those are all symptoms of low confidence. And that sucks you in as well. Maybe your brand takes a hit, not because of bad people, but just because of bad communication. Communication with clients falls because in many cases, it all lands in your lap. And then this has an effect on your stress level. Maybe you're like a lot of people. There's this special time of night, 2 a.m., when you wake up, suddenly wake up from a sound sleep and you wonder, did I order that? Did we order that? What are we missing? What got missed today? The mental load just never shuts off because you're always thinking for other people, thinking about, did I tell them to do this? Did I follow up with them? Have they done this? And you slip into micromanagement. You don't want to be a micromanager, but you find yourself slipping into micromanagement because you feel like you have to, and you can just feel your team losing motivation because they're being micromanaged. And this has an effect on your confidence to grow the business. The idea of growing your business feels risky because you're already stretched too thin. And if you're concerned that if you take on more projects, that will just overwhelm you. You're afraid to take on more work or bigger projects because you know the system will break. And instead of being excited about the future, you're hesitant. Maybe even this business that you started, you've kind of fallen out of love with it, and maybe you just dread it, and you feel like you have a job instead of having a business. So here's what becomes possible when you have a culture of accountability. When you take care of this missing piece that is really preventing accountability, you have more time to spend growing the business instead of being stuck in day-to-day firefighting. You have clear process that shows exactly where each project stands and who's accountable for what. Just imagine having complete confidence that you know who is accountable for what part of each process and each project, that they're accountable for that. You are able to get the business out of your head and into systems that your team can actually follow. You have real KPIs and performance metrics, so your people know what's expected and how they're doing and how your projects are doing. I remember on the very first construction project I was on a long time ago, my boss's boss came out to the job site trailer and he said, hey, Todd, how's the project going? And I said, Dave, it's going great. And he sort of shook his head and then said, how do you know? And I didn't have a really good answer because it just kind of felt like things were going well. But imagine that you actually have some data, you have some metrics to be able to answer the question, how is this project going? How is the business doing? Imagine you're able to deliver a consistent, high-quality client experience from the first meeting through the final punch list, and you don't have to be there every step of the way. Your business is more efficient. Your projects start faster, so they start smoother. There's less inefficiency, there's less chaos, and they're more profitable. You want your team to make smart decisions without everything having to run through you. You're able to delegate outcomes and results instead of telling people what to do, instead of delegating tasks. And then you can trust that your people will follow through and that they have the tools they need. And ultimately, you have a team that's empowered. They're clear on expectations and they're set up to win every day without you having to tell them every move to make. So that's what most people want. That's what a culture of accountability looks like. That's what a culture of accountability does. But there are a few pitfalls, a few thinking traps, some head trash that keeps people stuck. Even if you're thinking, I want my team to be more accountable. I want to empower my people. I want my people to take ownership. There are a few things that could be holding you back, right? There are a few thinking traps. I'm going to run through a couple of these. It could be that you're thinking, well, you know what? Construction is just chaos. It's just the way it is, right? Construction is chaos. If you've accepted chaos as normal, that's a problem. The chaos is actually a symptom of missing structure and missing systems. It's a sign, a flashing red light of a systems deficiency. I would tell you, construction is not chaos. Those two are not synonymous. Chaos is a choice not to do the planning, not to put the structure and the systems in place. You may think that your clients don't want you to slow down and dial things in. They want you to rush. You may think, oh, my clients won't go for all of this structure. Let me ask you this. Who is running your business? Who's going to decide how successful your business is? One of our clients, his name is Darren. He's just now wrapping up our Systematize Your Construction Business program. And he said, going through this process, he realized that his clients were running his business. He was just doing what they wanted him to do. So you've got to decide who is going to run your business, you or your clients. You may be thinking, we're doing okay. It's not like we're crashing. We're stable. My question is, do you want to spend the next 5 years just not crashing? Do you want to spend the rest of your career just doing something it's not that bad. We're not that bad. You may be thinking, it's hard to find good people. Nobody wants to work. These fill in the blank generation, they don't want to work. People don't take ownership. You can't find good people. You're not sure if it's even possible to build the team you want. What if it's not the people that are the problem? I mean, look around. Are there other construction companies in this country doing the same kind of work you're doing that are growing and hiring people? Probably so. So maybe it's not the workforce. Hey, if Chick-fil-A can take a demographic that's mostly teenagers and teach them to be polite and efficient and say my pleasure every chance they get and not be on their phones all the time during work, maybe you could do the same thing with adult construction workers. We'll get back to the episode in just a minute. Think about these two questions. First, do you have a clear, actionable plan? In other words, a strategy for your business for the next 12 months. Second, does your team know exactly where you're headed and how you plan to get there? If your business was a road trip, are you just driving aimlessly without a map, hoping you'll get there, or do you have a clear destination and a route? If your business was a football team, are you just running around the field without a game plan, playing pickup ball, or do you have a strategy to win the game, like the pros do? Here's the reality. As the leader, it's your job to create the strategy, and your team is counting on you for that. If you'd like some help with that, for a limited time, you can download our free strategic planning guide. It's the same guide that has helped hundreds of construction business owners gain clarity, set clear goals, and be able to communicate a winning strategy to their teams. In just 60 to 90 minutes, you'll map out your plan for the next year. No more guessing, no more drifting. And it's the first step toward designing the business that you want. In fact, it's the first step in our Systematize Your Construction Business program. If you want to get your hands on that, head over to constructionleadingedge.com/planning, PLANNING, to download your free strategic planning guide. Stop running around in circles. Stop just treading water. Get clarity on the vision and direction of your company. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/planning and download your free strategic planning guide today. What if it's not the people? What if it's something else? Maybe you're saying, well, we've always done it this way. Change would be hard on the team. What if your team is anxiously awaiting for you to make some kind of change? Maybe they're thinking about making a change one way or the other. Maybe they're thinking about leaving, going somewhere else that's less chaotic and less stressful. You may be thinking, we need more structure, but hey, we don't want to feel like a big corporation, right? Maybe you came out of the corporate world and you don't want to feel bureaucratic. You're concerned about having these systems and processes in place, making it feel more corporate. Here's the deal. Structure isn't all red tape. Jocko Willink would say discipline equals freedom. When you have disciplined systems and structures in place, it provides a great deal of freedom within the guardrails. Maybe you're thinking, hey, we're fast moving, we're growing really fast. These problems are just part of fast growing and things are going to settle down. Are things going to settle down? If you look over the past 5 years, have things ever settled down? Maybe not. And you may be thinking, hey, our people are already stretched too thin, adding more expectations would just overwhelm them. They just can't handle anymore. Well, the truth is, when you provide clarity, which we're going to talk about in a minute, when you provide clarity, it actually reduces the stress. It reduces the chaos and helps people to focus on what really matters. So it actually takes stress off them. So what do we do? If you want a culture of accountability, if you want people on your team to be accountable for results and take ownership, remember these 3 words. Accountability requires clarity. Accountability requires clarity. If you want real accountability, then your job is to provide clarity in your business and start with 3 areas. There are 3 areas of your business to provide clarity if you want your team to be accountable. The first one is clarity of results. And you need to answer this question for every role in your company. What does winning look like in my role? What does winning look like? If people don't know what winning looks like, then they can't be held accountable for achieving success. Let me say that again. If your people don't know what winning looks like, or it's a moving target, they can't be held accountable for achieving it. We worked with a company a few years ago, and as part of a deep dive process, we interviewed a young lady who had been with a construction company, a luxury home builder, for a few months, and she said something really interesting. After 3 months with the company, she said this: I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Imagine being 3 months into a job, and she said, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. You see, she had initially been hired to work on the selections side, more of an interior design role, but then she got pulled into, hey, we have these fires to put out with permits. So she got pulled into permitting. And then she got pulled into marketing. And then she sort of became this assistant for everybody in the company that people would just dump these tasks on her. And she said, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. So your team needs to be clear on the answer to this question. What results am I accountable for? And then what results are my teammates are accountable for? It needs to be clear who is accountable for what. Each person needs to be clear on what they're accountable for. And they also need to be clear on what everybody else that they work with is accountable for. They need to know, what does winning look like for me? How do I put points on the board? Because when you define outcomes clearly, then people take ownership. The right people take ownership. What I found is when you clearly define what winning looks like and you have clear outcomes, your A players rise to the occasion. A players love to know what winning looks like. A players like to put points on the board. C players, they like to have places to hide. They like to be able to point fingers. They like to be able to make excuses. And when you create a culture of accountability, you take away those places for those B and C players to hide. And in many cases, they'll leave on their own. If not, it will become glaringly obvious where the problem is. So when you do this, when you make it clear what winning looks like for each role, accountability becomes the norm, not something you have to enforce. It would be great, and some of you are thinking, I would love to just be able to hold my people accountable, but what's possible is creating this culture of accountability where the team holds each other accountable. You have this culture of accountability. About a year ago, a guy named Cole West went through our Systematize Your Construction Business program. He ran operations for a commercial concrete contracting business called Matchless Concrete, and I interviewed him on the podcast, and he shared this story on that interview. He said they needed more superintendents, and they had a young man named Max who had been with the company and had some leadership potential, but had made it clear he didn't want to be a superintendent because he watched what the superintendents did, saw the stress level, the chaos, just seemed like they were constantly running around. And he said, no thanks, not interested. A while after Max left, Cole went to him and said, hey, Max, we've got an opportunity. And we've made some changes to the role, and we've made it really clear what winning looks like for a superintendent role. And we would like to talk to you about that. So we went through this conversation. Cole shared with him how he clearly defined what winning looks like for an assistant superintendent role. Max said, that simplifies things a lot. That's super helpful. Yes. He accepted the job, was very successful as an assistant superintendent. And a few months later, he was promoted to a full superintendent. And Cole did that. The only difference was Cole defined what winning looked like for that role. And he did it using a tool that we developed called the Big Five. And what that means is each role has the list of the big five activities that are leading indicators of success. And when this is designed properly, an assistant superintendent, a project manager, a business development rep, a CFO will have a list of the big five activities that define what winning looks like. In other words, what Max figured out was he said, okay, this is the big five. So if I do these five things, I'm winning. That's simple. And that's what clarity looks like. I'm not talking about 50 bullet point job descriptions. What winning looks like needs to be clearly defined in a big five for each role. So you've got to have clarity on results. Answer the question, what does winning look like? That's number one. Number two is you need clarity of process. You need clarity of process. You need to clearly define this is how we do it. Without a documented process, your people have a few options to choose from. They can guess at how they should do it. They could do what's easiest. They can do it how they want to do it. They can ask you every move to make, or they can just not do it and then hide in the shadows and point fingers. So you need a playbook that outlines very simply, this is how we do it for each part of your business. Because a documented process removes friction, creates consistency, and it empowers your team to operate without needing constant input. Every professional sports team has a playbook. You also need a playbook. It works fine if you're a one-person show, but as soon as you have other people you need to delegate things to, this requires a playbook. You need to get it out of your head into a more accessible format so that people on your team can read and refer to and get trained on and learn this is how we do it. And if you're wondering where to start, my recommendation is to start with your pre-construction process. Design your pre-construction process to nail the handoff from the office to the field and make sure that your field teams have everything they need to finish instead of just enough to start. Start with your pre-construction process because that will eliminate 70, 80% of the chaos and the questions that you're probably dealing with on your job sites. So accountability requires clarity of process. You need a playbook that explains this is how we do it. Okay. About 10 years ago, I was working for a real estate developer and I was managing a design, development, and construction of a new office building for Valvoline. It was about 160,000 square foot building, fast track project, probably started later than it should. We had lots of changes. It was pretty chaotic from the jump for about 15 months. Yeah, we built a 160,000 square foot building in about 15 months. And I remember it was ribbon cutting day. And I was walking along the side of the building from the parking lot, getting ready to turn the corner to the ribbon cutting ceremony and the front entrance of the building. And I remember thinking, what was going through my head was, we've still got this problem with the booster pump. That's messed up. There was a crack in the curved glass in the revolving doors in the main lobby. There were just a lot of little problems. And all I was thinking about was the problems with hundreds of light fixtures that had this issue where they blinked constantly because there was a factory defect, all of the mental brain damage we went through for this polished concrete floor in the main lobby. They actually had race cars on display, a NASCAR car, a Formula One car in their lobby because this was Valvoline, working out all of the details on how to display these cars, get them into the building and all of this stuff. 15 months of chaos. And that's all I was thinking about as I walked around the corner. And then I walked up and saw this as I rounded the corner. There was this crowd, a couple hundred people standing there. They were Valvoline employees. And they were super excited about this new building. And I heard the CEO of Valvoline talk about how pivotal this was for their people, how excited they were to move into this new space and the impact it was going to have on people and how much nicer their food service facilities were, how much more collaboration, how much more sunlight. And I heard the mayor of Lexington, Kentucky talk about this. And I realized, wow, I had completely lost track of why we were doing this, completely lost track of the impact it was going to have on people. Which brings me to the third thing you need to have clarity on. If you want your people to be accountable, you need to provide clarity of vision. Where are we going and why does it matter? Why are we doing what we're doing? Okay. People want more than a paycheck. People want purpose. When your team understands the company's direction, why the company is heading in that direction, and how they contribute to that vision, they're much more engaged, much more motivated, and much more accountable. We do our best work when we're clear on why we're doing it. We'll get back to the show in just a second. If you're a construction business owner, let me ask you this. Are you feeling trapped in your business? Maybe you can't take a real vacation without being on call 24/7. Or when you finally do step away, you know there's going to be a mess waiting for you to clean up when you get back. Or maybe the constant stress of putting out fires and carrying all the responsibility and making all the decisions is keeping you up at night. And you're worried about losing a good employee, or it's affecting your health, or worse, it's keeping you from being present with your family. What if instead you could finally step back from the day-to-day chaos, take back control of your time, and build a business that runs profitably and smoothly even when you're not there? If that sounds good, I'd like to invite you to book a free business evaluation call with my team. In just one call, we'll help you get crystal clear on three things: the root cause of the biggest problems in your business, the goals and vision you want to achieve for your company and your life, and we'll map out a personalized roadmap you can follow to make that vision a reality. Look, we've helped hundreds of construction business owners systematize their business so they can work less, earn more, and actually enjoy their lives. And we can help you too. But the first step, it's up to you. Head over to constructionleadingedge.com/apply to book your free call, or just click the link in the show notes. Don't wait until it's too late. Take the first step toward freedom today. All right, let's get back to the show. So it's very likely that there's a Y deficiency in your business. Not a vitamin Y deficiency, but a WHY deficiency. If you want your people to be accountable, to take ownership, one of the things you can do is make it clear why you're doing this. There's a proverb that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And that means without a guiding purpose, people can become undisciplined and they lose their way. If you're a Stoic, a follower of Stoic philosophy, Seneca said, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. In other words, you don't know where you're going. If you have no vision, no direction, no wind is favorable. So you need to provide clarity on the vision. Why are you doing what you're doing? So share the vision often, reinforce why the work matters, and tell stories of impact. If you're wondering, how do I do that? Is this some corporate vision statement? Do I have to record a video? Do I have to become a motivational speaker? God forbid, do I have to have a podcast like this Todd DeWalt guy? You don't. An easy way, very impactful way to start sharing the vision is to tell stories of impact. Talk about how the work you're doing and your company is doing is impacting the lives of other people, your customers, maybe your employees. Maybe there's a nonprofit or some organization in your community that you are having an impact on. There's a gentleman named Charles Antis whom I interviewed on the podcast a long time ago, and he's the CEO of Antis Roofing, very large roofing company in California. And he talked about their why. And the why of Antis Roofing, which has been their why, their purpose, their mission, their vision for over 30 years, is keeping families dry. They're a roofing company. They keep families dry. And they also contribute quite a bit to the Ronald McDonald House. So it's very clear to employees of Antis Roofing, why are we doing this? Why are we growing this company? Is it just to get a paycheck? No, they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They're part of contributing to the Ronald McDonald House. They are keeping families dry. So your job as a leader is to articulate the vision of the company, articulate the direction of the company, articulate why the company exists, and then connect the dots because your people are wondering, why does my work matter? How do I connect with this? I had a couple of situations, experiences with this, one not so great and one which was very good. I was managing projects for Procter and Gamble. This was 2005, 6, and 7. And I was working for a company, large real estate and project management company, on the Procter and Gamble account. And the senior executive vice president came and we had an all hands meeting. And his name was Charlie. And Charlie shared the vision for the company and the quarterly goals and the annual goals for our company to the 40 or 50 of us who were gathered. And it was exciting. I remember thinking, wow, this is great. So I went to my manager and said, hey, Jeff, that was really great what Charlie shared. How can I help facilitate that? Like, how does my work contribute to that vision? And Jeff said, I don't know. And that was pretty deflating, very deflating, because that was a great vision, but there was no connection between the dots. There was no answer to the question, how does my work matter? How does my work contribute to that vision? On the flip side, I was in one of the Procter & Gamble facilities that at the time was mostly dedicated to pharmaceutical research. And in their lobby, they had what was called a branding wall. And this wall was 30 feet tall and 60 feet long. And they liked to do this in their main lobbies. And in this case, they had little plaques of all of the products that had been created in this facility. Things like Crest, but then some medications that had changed people's lives had been developed. Medications that helped people with osteoporosis and osteoarthritis had been developed. And I remember thinking, I was there to look at this project, fixing or replacing revolving doors. But I remember thinking, okay, this helps me because the work I'm doing is connected to this. This is the impact, very indirect impact that my work is having on people. So it's your job to create that alignment between the vision of the company and how each role in your company's work matters, how it connects and aligns with that. So it starts with clarity. You've got to have clarity on the vision and then provide clarity on how each person's work connects to that vision. So when you install clarity in those three areas, clarity of results, clarity of process, and clarity of vision, you give your team a lot of the things that they need to step up, to take ownership, and perform at a high level. Because at the end of the day, accountability requires clarity. So now let's talk about where a lot of people get hung up. A lot of people get hung up and think, yes, we need to do that. And they feel like they either have to DIY it, they have to do it themselves, or that there's no way. Well, they just basically feel like they have to DIY it. But let's be honest. If you were going to figure this stuff out on your own, you probably would have figured out how to do this, right? But here's the deal. I'm not taking a shot at you. It's not your fault that you don't know how to provide this kind of clarity because nobody teaches this stuff in school. They don't teach it, certainly not in construction management school or engineering or even in business school. You probably didn't get into construction to become an organizational psychologist. You probably just learned to build. But running a business, building a team, and scaling operations, that's a whole different ballgame. And a lot of people are just winging it. Here's the other thing. You can't read, I heard somebody say this, you can't read the label from inside the pickle jar. You can't read the label from inside the pickle jar. In other words, it's really hard, maybe even impossible, to see where the real problems are when you're stuck inside the day-to-day, especially if you've only worked in your company. Maybe it's been decades since you've worked in another company, maybe never. So you need an outside perspective, somebody who can help you zoom out, assess what's working and what's not, and guide you toward what actually scales. And something I hear a lot is, it sounds something like this: I hate to spend money. Man, I hate to spend money. I hate to spend money. I hate to spend money. I need to do this stuff, but I hate to spend money. And the right systems are an investment, right? But there's two things you need to understand. Number one, you're probably already spending this money in the form of profit bleeds, rework, mistakes, schedule delays, missed opportunities. It's very likely you're already spending this money as it is. And an investment in your business to get these systems in place can be expensive, but you know what's really expensive is not knowing how to grow your company. When you're unclear on how to structure your business, how to build a team that takes ownership and takes accountability, it's a very likely, in a lot of conversations I have with people, they come to the realization that they're leaving 6 figures, maybe 7 figures on the table through profit bleeds, missed opportunities, and wasted time. So let's recap. Accountability requires clarity. If you want real accountability, your business absolutely requires clarity in 3 specific areas. Clarity of results. What does winning look like for each role? Number 2, clarity of process. How do I do my job? It needs to be clear that this is how we do it. And number 3, clarity of vision. Where are we going and why does it matter? You need to provide clarity in those 3 areas because accountability requires clarity. So let me ask you something. If you're listening to this point, if you're still listening to this, how long have you been thinking, yes, we need to do these things, got to get roles and responsibilities dialed in, I've got to get systems and processes in the business so we can grow or make things more efficient? How long have you been saying, I should have more freedom, I should have more money, I should have less stress, I'm so busy and I'm so tied up putting out fires, I don't know where to start? And think about this. What is the COI? What's the cost of inaction? The profit bleeds from rework, schedule delays, and giveaways. If you added those up, how much is that costing you? How much sleep are you losing because of it? And let's talk about your family. What price is your family paying because of the inefficiency in the business and the stress that it's causing for you? And what are you concerned might happen if nothing changes? If things continue on the same course for the next 12 months or so, or the next 5 years, what are you concerned might happen? Concerned that reputation with clients will take a hit. Maybe key employees will get stressed and leave. Look, you know you need this, right? You know you need systems and processes. You know you need the things in place to be able to create that culture of accountability. You've been thinking about it for months, maybe years. Every time there's a mistake, you think, man, we could have prevented that if we just had the right systems in place. Maybe your team is asking for it. You just don't have time to figure it out for yourself. So if you own a custom home building, a remodeling business, or a commercial general contracting business, and you're doing at least $2 million in annual revenue, if you're stuck in the day-to-day, if you can't take a real vacation, if you feel like you own a job, if you don't feel like you have the systems in place you need to hold your team accountable, then this is for you. All right, I'm looking for 5 owners that meet that description this month to help you systematize your construction business the next 8 weeks so the team runs the projects and you get your time back. The team has the structures in place to be accountable. If it's not a fit, if our program is not a fit for you, then we'll let you know that very quickly, and then we'll point you in the right step. So if that's you, the next step is to book a business evaluation call with my team. We will review your situation. We'll get to the bottom of what are the real constraints in your business. We'll talk about what the hidden profit is in your business, and then map out a plan for you. And if it makes sense, we'll talk about what working together looks like. So go to the link in the show notes or simply visit constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, and book your business evaluation call. We're only opening up 5 spots in the program this month. So if you want to get off the hamster wheel and build a company that has a culture of accountability, go grab one of those calls now. That's constructionleadingedge.com/apply.